On April 29th, Springfield experienced the worst electrical outage in 15 years. Approximately 62,000 customers lost power, some of them for several days. Then in June, Mother Nature delivered a repeat performance, which put nearly 40,000 people out of power. My guest today is Dwayne Fulk, the president of City Utilities of Springfield. We're going to talk about those storms and the utility's response, and about the challenges facing the utility in meeting the community's needs in the future. Dwayne, welcome to In Our Town.
Thank you, Tom.
It's good to have you here. Well, what's the deal with Mother Nature? Is this climate change or what? I mean, two giant storms that close together?
I wish I knew. So those storms individually and certainly together are the largest storm impacts that we've seen at City Utilities since the 2007 ice storm. So we now have a campaign to eliminate the 29th from the calendar, so we don't have to worry about that in the future.
Were you prepared for it?
I think we're as prepared as we possibly could have been. We have emergency procedures, we have emergency materials, we have mutual aid agreements with utility partners. Most importantly, and this is a more recent development than the 2007 ice storms, we have a crisis management team organized and practiced just for this purpose. So we're ready to go.
And you, as I understand that you have mutual relationships with other utilities and big companies that can remove trees so that you call them up, they're going to pick up the phone.
That is correct, absolutely. So we have two major agreements. One's with the Missouri Public Utility Alliance, all the Missouri utilities that are part of that group, as well as it has its own emergency mutual aid crew also, and the American Public Power Association to pull in additional help from other states if we need that. We do have contractors on call for tree trimming and for emergency electric restoration. So all of them working together until service is restored is what we want.
So you think that your response was as good as it could have been under the circumstances?
I would completely agree, although we can always do better. So something we do after every incident, whether it's something that we cause or caused by Mother Nature, is an after-action review. So that's a process we go through internally at City Utilities, but also in conjunction with all the other service partners that we have. We have our final report on the April storm next week, and so we'll find out more about exactly what we can do, but we already have a list of items that we're working on.
How long were some people out of power?
For the April storm, some up to 7 days. For the June storm, up to 5 days.
Well, I was around in 2007. I was mayor in those days, actually, and the 2007 ice storm arrived on my birthday. And what a gift, right? And the much worse because of the ice and all the people are out and the weather. Some people, I think, I'm going back now, gee, I think it was 2 weeks maybe. There was, and I digress, I do that as I get older. It was funny because there was an effort by the previous administration, or the administration that was running things in those days, and they wanted to clear a lot of the trees that were in the lines. Enormous pushback in the community. You're cutting up my beautiful tree that's been there for 50 years. And there was a lot of controversy about that. And but the ice storm really demonstrated how much damage those tree limbs can do. It was a crazy time. We couldn't. A lot of the weatherheads where the power came into the house. You were supposed to get qualified electricians, licensed electricians to fix that, and there weren't enough of them around.
Right.
And we were bringing in people from all over the country to do that. And as you know, the city can exercise emergency powers, and we just kind of waived the licensing requirements so people didn't freeze in their homes.
Right.
You do what you got to do in those circumstances,
I agree. I do remember that. I wasn't with City Utilities at the time, but I lived in Springfield, and fortunately my house didn't lose power, which meant that we had lots of guests at that time.
Oh, I bet you did.
But I agree that I think there's a different understanding and a different attitude towards tree trimming now. And it's my understanding that a part of that is a practice that city utilities has leaned into to do more regular tree trimming between those storms throughout the year. And so we now invest currently $4.5 million in tree trimming each year to get to a 5-year cycle. So we should be trying to get to each area of Springfield within 5 years to keep the limbs smaller that we're cutting and more efficient.
Well, I bet it had some
Yeah.
impact
Yes.
on the severity of the outage this time.
I think it did. So in looking at the two storms together, April and June, that would add up to just as much, if not more, of
Yeah,
the
probably
ice storm.
more, honestly, yeah.
And yet the total restoration time was less, and where we saw the most dramatic difference was the number of hotel rooms our mutual aid partners were needing to use, because we have much better computerized tracking systems for the outages and for the crews and for the direction of where to go and how to work to get the best bang for our buck and time when it comes to getting people back on. So we're able to be much more efficient, which I think helps a lot.
You know, you don't appreciate your power or your water service until you don't have it.
True.
It really is miraculous about how it just comes on when it needs to. Still, when something happens, folks that are affected frequently get their nose out of joint. You know, I'm thinking in a different context. You had a big water main pipe break out, I think along 65 last November, resulted in
Correct.
a boil order. What was the reason for the break on that one?
So that break happened just a couple of weeks after I took this position as the president and CEO. And Gary Gibson, at his retirement, just the few days before that, who was the CEO before me, when asked what the next major issue would be, he said, "Well, I'm worried about a water main break along Galloway because there's a lot of work being done there. But if that happens, 30,000 people might be out of water." So that was the number of people affected by that water main break, because it was a major portion of our system. It was a 36-inch T off of a 48-inch main, so our largest portion of the system when it comes to water pipe. And what happened was a retaining ring for the cap on that 36-inch T broke, and the cap flew off. So we lost a lot of water at once.
It was more what you might call a defective part as opposed to a lot of deferred maintenance.
That's correct. In fact, it was a pretty recent part. So we believe it was a equipment malfunction, a part malfunction, as opposed to lack of maintenance. We did have not that many people out of water. In fact, no one was out of water except for a couple of customers for a short period of time. But we did issue a boil advisory telling our customers that since pressure had dropped in the line, we wanted to test all the water to make sure there hadn't been some type of contaminant. That testing takes time, so we did have about 30,000 people under a boil advisory for about 24 hours.
You know, this reminds me, I've officed in downtown Springfield since 1980, and we've had a couple. It's just for not everybody probably knows this, but city utilities is charged with delivery of potable water, but the city of Springfield's responsibility is the sewers.
Correct.
And we had a big sewer blockage in downtown Springfield probably 25, 30 years ago. And there weren't even, the plans were non-existent. And there's some old sewer pipes under the square in these older buildings that were clay and in poor repair. And it's been an issue that the city's been dealing with for a long time. But it raises the question about the quality of the pipes that deliver water in the community. What about their overall condition?
I would say City Utilities does the best job that it can, and among the best of any utility I know of in terms of maintaining infrastructure, including its water. Our goal is to be on a 100-year replacement cycle for water and for natural gas infrastructure, for our pipes and the things that go with those. That seems like a long time, but there's a lot of cast iron, well-built pipe that's still in the ground and still functioning properly. We try to focus on areas that are more prone to leakage as opposed to age, but overall, that's what our goal is. And we actually have our water quality report. Our latest one was just issued, and it's on our website. So you can see what the effect of that is on the overall water quality for Springfield. And for instance, we've received the Director's Award from the Partnership for Safe Water for 25 years in a row now. So the only utility we know of that has done that, less than 1% of water treatment plants ever get that even one time. So,
Well, that's good for you guys.
so we're very excited about that.
Okay, now that brings up another issue. As I said, I lived down or worked my office out of Springfield since 1980, and why is it, I don't know if it's the city or the utility, but why is it seems like every 2 or 3 years we tear up Jefferson Street and resurface it? What's going on there? Why can't you guys get on the same page and do all the work at the same time?
That is a great question, and I have the luxury of saying I don't know because I'm new here. But I probably soon will no longer have that excuse. But I can tell you that from my perspective, previously with City Utilities as its general counsel and now as the president CEO, we do the best job we can coordinating and collaborating with the city and with others who have a need to make changes to infrastructure. But sometimes those are for different reasons at different times. So we try to avoid that if we can. We try to plan ahead and work together to make sure that we know what each other's plans are. Sometimes that's not always a perfect process. So making that better is one of the main goals that David Cameron and I have. He's our new city manager.
Sure.
And he and I have talked about that often, about how we can make that process even better.
Well, a lot of people think there's room for improvement.
I agree.
So you not too long ago, there was some controversy in the community about people who felt that they were getting shut-off notices very abruptly before they could react. And, I must say, as a card-carrying senior citizen, it's not like the old days when I could call city utilities and talk to a person. Now I bounce around between this computer and Lord knows what it'll be like when AI kicks in. And but the allegation raised by some people was, hey, I got a robocall one day before CU cut off my utilities, and it was at the worst possible time. I know, I've been around for a while. I know that's not done immediately. It's not like miss your payment due on the 15th.
Correct.
You guys do try to work with them. But why don't you explain for our listeners what the process is if somebody is going to get their utility shut off?
Sure. Thanks, Tom. I'd be glad to. So first of all, that's our last thing that we want to do. We're in the business of providing utilities, charging for utilities, receiving revenue from utilities so we can invest in that infrastructure that we were talking about. So that's our method of last resort. The first time a customer knows that they owe us for usage is when they get their bill. So they should have an idea of exactly what they owe and why. And we have a number of methods to receive that bill, whether it's through the mail or through email or through our app. And we're always looking at other ways to provide that notice. If they're not able, or if they don't pay that bill within the first billing cycle, they'll receive a past due balance on the next bill.
Now, this is all through the Postal Service.
If it's by mail. Now, our customers can choose to have paperless billing, so they can choose to get it by email. They can also view their bills on our My Account app. But otherwise, it's through the Postal Service. So those bills come on a 30-day cycle. So if the past due amount isn't paid, then in the next billing cycle, we will schedule a disconnect, but provide the call to the customer before the disconnect actually happens to give them notice that it's going to happen in the next business
What's the
day.
space of time between when they get the notice and when they get cut off?
So the initial bill and the time that they're going to get cut off is at least 60 days. We send a letter prior to the disconnect. That's the disconnect notice. The letter goes in the mail as well, and the goal is to get that to hit the customer before the disconnect and within a few days before, so they have time to make arrangements if they choose to do that. Now, they could have made those arrangements at any time along the way. we send we send disconnect notices to up to 7% of our customers each month, but less than 1% actually get disconnected.
Well, I'm not sure I understand. So let's say I'm going to get it cut off on June 1. How many days prior to that do you put the notice in the mail?
That notice goes in the mail 7 to 10 days prior to that.
Okay.
The Postal Service, as I believe most of us understand, has stopped guaranteeing when the mail is going to be delivered. So we are looking at other ways to notify customers, and one of those ways is to send an email at the same time we send that notice, if we have their email. And again, they can also find that information through our app.
Right. All right. But, so let's say my wife and I have some financial emergency, or we lose our job or whatever, and we know we're not going to be able to pay this month's utility bill. What kind of arrangements, if any, can be made if we call CU before it's cut off?
Sure. We highly recommend people do that. We do have a number of people who take advantage of that. That would be that more than 6% who are in the disconnect pool but eventually aren't disconnected. All you have to do is call our customer service line or contact us through our app. You can do that through email or through the app itself. And we will work with our customers based on their means and what their schedule is, as long as they're following that schedule after we make the payment arrangement. So that's the number one way to take care of the issue. If a disconnect notice is issued and if it's not taken care of before the call, the business day before the disconnect, the only way to stop the disconnect is to pay the bill in full.
But you also have an exception if it's super cold, right?
We do. There are exceptions for high heat, low temperature, and also for life-saving devices.
Right. And let's say some folks aren't good at month-to-month budgeting. You have a level pay arrangement as well, right?
That is correct. So our customers can choose to do that so their bills don't fluctuate on a month-to-month basis. They will be adjusted on an annual basis, which gives them better predictability. Our customers can also pay ahead on the app if they choose to pay just a few days at a time when they have funds available. And there are also several programs to provide assistance through OCAC and our project share. We fund OCAC, and there's federal assistance through the LIHEAP program is what it's called, to provide that funding as well.
Well, the Postal Service has got its challenges. I think now when I mail a birthday card to my good buddy Dwayne Fulk, it somehow needs to go to Kansas City first.
True.
And given those circumstances, is there any more you can do, knowing that your cutoff, your letter might not get to them before the power's cut off?
Correct. So we are always looking at ways to improve. So one of those ways is, as I mentioned, we're planning to start sending emails along with the notice by mail. We also are implementing various texting capabilities, and so we'll have that capability to do texting in addition to those methods.
Okay. I want to talk about the future for a while. Let's start with electrical generation. We built a coal plant, the John Twitty coal plant out southwest. Gosh, I don't know, it seems like maybe 20 years now, something.
That's correct.
And in those days, coal seemed to be the best thing to do. But nowadays, Springfield, as well as utilities across the country, are reducing their coal generation. You're switching to gas. You're talking about wind and solar renewables. So let's talk about the pie. Right now, what percent of our power generation comes from those various sources?
Right. Well, that varies on a daily, monthly, annual basis, but in general, I could say that we have our own generation producing about a third of the pie. Our renewables that we contract through power purchase agreements are about a third, and then a third are market purchases from Southwest Power Pool.
So it can vary any particular month or season.
It
I don't know, 10 or
wildly.
50. Does it wildly? Really?
I wouldn't say wildly. It fluctuates within those pie
Right.
pieces. So renewables are typically around 30-35%. Market purchases again around a third. But within our generation, it can vary between coal and gas. depending on what season it is and what's the least cost provider for us. That's one of the benefits of being in an integrated marketplace like Southwest Power Pool is we can choose the lowest cost provider. It's also a challenge sometimes because our units may or may not run depending on if they're the lowest cost provider within the pool.
And it's really a very sophisticated operation, this Southwest Power Pool. I mean, you have people with all those computer screens and dials and stuff saying, oh, gee, I can pick up some power for a half-cent cheaper here if I lock in. I mean, it's it kind of makes me think of people in the old days and on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange doing stuff back and forth. They're doing it electronically now, but it's really sophisticated, isn't it?
It's very sophisticated, and that is one aspect of it. They're called the balancing authority because they also have to worry about voltage and they have to worry about reliability. They call themselves the air traffic controllers of the electric
Well, I think
grid.
that's
So
a good metaphor
like
for that, or
Yeah.
analogy, yeah.
Something like that.
So let me ask you this. I mean, I know that Springfield's a partner in that, but I guess there are two questions. It's probably like a lot of things. You can always get what you need if you're willing to pay for it, but it can be really expensive. So you want to take measures to make sure that you can purchase your electricity at a reasonable rate. What safeguards are in place so that when we really need electricity, we're not paying 3 or 4 times the regular rate?
Sure. Tom, I would say this. One of the biggest aha moments that I had when I started at City Utilities is that we sell all the power we produce in Springfield into the market, and we buy all the power our customers use out of the market. So I'd say one of the first protections is that we are in the marketplace, and so we have the opportunity to have our own power supply that we can then use as a hedge against those prices. So if we can produce power and it's in the market because it's one of the cheapest providers, then we're able to make a margin off of that. And that goes right back into savings for our customers. And then we're able to bank those savings and use those when the power is either more expensive or we're not able to produce our power that we can sell into the marketplace. There's a day ahead market for what we call the base load generation. That's the coal and other base load generators. Then an hour by hour market for gas generation and other short term resources. So,
the utilities putting in, trying to look into the future. Tell us a little bit about the gas turbines and the battery storage you're working on.
Sure, absolutely. One of the you could call it benefits, but one of the detriments sometimes of being in a power pool arrangement in an integrated marketplace is that they set the rules. So we are now required to have 36% more power than we need for our peak demand. The reason being is in a situation like Winter Storm Uri, where there's a number of generating units not available, everyone in the footprint can still have enough power to cover their base load, and there won't have to be any rolling blackouts or temporary load shedding.
Okay.
So because of that, we had excess power, but when the new requirements went into effect, it went from 15% to 36%, so more than doubled in terms of what's called the planning reserve margin. So because of that,
was that a surprise?
It was a surprise in terms of the overall process, but Southwest Power Pool has a stakeholder process. I am a member of the members committee for that, so we did discuss what that number should be. But the standard was required by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, by FERC. The standard is 1 outage in 10 years, so it's a pretty high standard. And so in doing the calculations backwards from that to figure out how much excess was needed, it's hard to argue with the math. So it was a little bit of a surprise in terms of how the number came out, but not a surprise of the process.
You know, it reminds me a little bit about stuff that I had to think about when I was on council, and we would need to build detention basins and size storm sewers. I don't frankly remember whether it was a 100-year storm or a 50-year storm. Yeah, it'd be nice to do it for a 500-year storm, but you couldn't afford to do it.
Sure.
So you did something. But then it always seemed like, gee, we're having a lot of those 50-year storms lately. And that's what you experienced this year, or earlier this year,
That's right. I was just thinking of that same connection. Yes. So it's hard to argue with that as well. And you mentioned our John Twitty Energy Center and the coal units that are there. It was 20 years ago, and those units are aging. And so as we look out to our power supply needs, it doesn't hurt to add new generating resources anyway. That's part of our integrated resource plan. Our latest one just got approved and updated. But part of that is and are these generating units, 3 50 megawatt gas turbine units at the McCartney generating station to add to the 2 that are already there on the northeast side of Springfield, and then battery energy storage systems at the Blackman water treatment plant. 5 megawatts is a backup there, and then 31 megawatts at the former James River Power Station on the southeast side of Springfield. Those are some new technology. When people hear about battery storage, they think of the lithium batteries that you've heard can sometimes spontaneously combust.
Right.
But these are actually zinc-based batteries. Not only are they non-flammable, but they're also domestically sourced. So we're able to hopefully take advantage of the largest portion of the tax credit direct payments that we're now eligible for. So those units are being installed as we speak. The first battery units at Blackman hopefully will be operational by the end of this year or the beginning of next year. The battery units at James River Power Station by the end of next year, and the gas generating units at McCartney shortly thereafter.
Now, President Trump and the current Republicans in Congress, I should say, have backed away from a lot of these renewables that the Biden administration was pushing, and they're talking, as you well know, for if you want to get government assistance in the form of federal tax credits, you need to break ground, I think, sometime before the end of the year and all that kind of thing. Is that affecting city utilities plans?
We don't know for sure yet. So we don't believe that these projects will lose any support or funding for tax credit direct payment financing, but we haven't counted on that in our financial model. So if we get it, it's great. That will help further offset the cost and reduce the overall rates for our customers, but we haven't counted on something that isn't for sure. None of these would.
So you would do the deal with the federal assistance or not?
That is correct, and because we have this requirement for Southwest Power Pool. One of the advantages of the battery projects, besides the things I've already mentioned, is that they can recharge in the evening when power, in the late evening and overnight when power is cheap, typically because the wind blows at night, and so Southwest Power Pool is very rich in wind resources, and we have several contracts for that as well. And then we can discharge them during the day when power is more expensive. So there's a potential to use that as not just a backup generation or additional generation for us, but a way to provide further margin in the market.
So what does your crystal ball tell you about where your power is going to be coming from in 10 years? Is it roughly a third, third, and third, or what are the experts saying?
Sure. So I mentioned our integrated resource plan that happens every 3 years, and our latest just was approved by our board last month and is currently on our website. That one predicts that we will maintain a similar resource mix, but our new gas generating units will likely be more efficient, and so they probably will be in the market a little bit more than our coal generation. But then towards the end of the plan, our contracts for renewables will start dropping off, and we'll either build more renewables, we'll have access to hydrogen, which our new gas
really? That's interesting.
Our new gas generating units have the capability of using for fuel, but we'll need some pipeline or some infrastructure in addition to that to be able to provide the actual molecules here to use.
Well, and you mentioned infrastructure. It's not obvious to everybody that, particularly in the case of electrical generation, it's one thing to generate it, but you also got to transmit the stuff.
Correct.
And there's lots of issues that come up with that. If you want to run a big power line through Kansas, not all the farmers like it, and the state legislatures don't. And so it's nice to have wind in Kansas, but if you can't deliver the electricity to Missouri, it doesn't do you a heck of a lot of good. And you're dealing with those same kind of issues with this infrastructure, you know.
We saw that recently with the Green Belt Express project.
Exactly, that's what I was trying to think about.
Failed in Missouri, and so we did just recently get Southwest Power Pool to approve new transmission lines that could be built in our area to help alleviate some congestion, just like there's congestion on the freeway, congestion on our power lines that cause our prices to be higher sometimes when we try to purchase power. But getting those constructed is a long process that's uncertain because of political issues, also the financing involved. So we're focused on local power generation projects right now.
Let's switch over to water supply. You have similar issues. Years ago, the voters in Springfield approved a pipeline to Stockton Lake. Again, I'm showing how old I am, but it was interesting. The idea was that we would build, what do we call it? County Line Dam. It was going to be on James River, and it was going to flood a bunch of land in Webster County. And those folks don't vote, but they were certainly heard. And the utility backed off on that idea. And then the voters said, "Okay, well, we'll build a pipeline to Stockton." And excuse me, that was supposed to take care of our water supply needs for a long time. Has that time come and expired? Where are we at?
Sure, great question. So Stockton Lake is one of our water sources, and just like power, we have a diversity of sources. We also can source from McDaniel Lake, from Fellows Lake, from the James River, and from a couple of wells. But Stockton Lake is our emergency backup. So when the other sources are low on supply, that's where we start pumping. It costs us more because of the pumping costs, but that's nice to have that emergency supply. So it's hard to guess how long that supply will last because we only use it when needed. But I think the general thought is that we were good at least through 2030, 2040 with the supply that we had. So about 20 years ago, it's my understanding, a process was started to get an additional allocation from Stockton Lake. And that process just concluded and was just successful to get Congress to approve that additional allocation through a group we're a part of called the Southwest Missouri Water Coalition. And we're currently negotiating contracts with the various providers and with hydropower users so we can start taking advantage of that allocation. But in order to do that, we would need additional infrastructure, additional pipeline across those same easements to provide that water source to Springfield.
Oh, because you just couldn't pump it fast enough if that time
Correct.
came.
Correct.
So how does that work? I mean, you could think of a big water tank, and is it like this? City Utilities gets 5% of whatever's there, or is it like, I'm making this up, but Kansas City gets the first 10% and then we're next, and so that if you're unfortunate to be at the last in line and the water level drops, you get nothing, or do you always get a percentage of what's in the pond, so to speak?
That's a good question, Tom, and I hope you don't mind me saying that I'm not sure of the answer, but I'll find out. I do know that it's typically more complicated than you think. So,
oh, I'm sure of that as well.
From what I've heard, we've never drawn down more water out of Stockton than evaporation has occurred. So it's not going to suck the lake dry anytime soon. But I know that there's a certain level below which we're not allowed to pump, and I know that there's a certain level that starts before those allocations are calculated. So between the groups, I'd say that's where this contract comes into play, is what's the priority and where do those levels stop and start.
There's been some talk in some states, candidly I'm not sure if it's true in Missouri, at the state legislature, is we don't want Missouri water going outside the state. Can you bring us up to date where those discussions are?
To my knowledge, we have not been involved in those discussions, probably because we're not near the border. Although part of this Missouri Water Coalition includes some communities that are close to the border.
Well, so, it's a worry in Joplin, yes, for example.
Correct, yeah. Joplin is one of those communities, or at least the water provider for Joplin is one of those communities. So in terms of water supply, we believe water will continue to become scarcer and more valuable. And so securing this allocation, we believe, will satisfy our water needs through 2060 or even 2070.
You know, there's an old joke about out west, they don't fight over whiskey, they fight over water. And hopefully we won't see that here in the Ozarks, you know, but who knows?
Hopefully not. One
Yeah,
thing this
please.
may lead for us in terms of that issue is that as area communities grow and as their water needs grow, and they're part of this coalition as well, they don't currently have the ability to treat surface water like they treat the well water that they're currently on in the area's aquifers. So it might lead city utilities to become a wholesale water provider or be more involved in terms of distribution to these other communities. That's something that we're already talking with communities about. That's something we're already looking at starting to plan for.
Well, that's an interesting point. It's something, in my view, that because it has other implications. What do we want growth to look like in Southwest Missouri?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know. It used to be that Nixa bought electricity from Springfield. We were a wholesale supplier to them. Are we still
Mm-hmm.
doing that?
We are not. They're buying directly from the Southwest Power Pool market.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But you know, there's always a question about what development should look like.
Mm-hmm.
Should it just happen organically, or should there be some planning to it? Do we want to discourage sprawl, that sort of thing? And there would be a lot of leverage for Springfield and Greene County to have in that if they said, well, we want to see development in such and such a way, or we're not going to provide water supply or meet your future water needs.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any kind of thinking about long-range thinking on that sort of thing right
Mm-hmm.
now?
I am aware of some long-range thinking, but not in that way. So it's almost the opposite of that. The city has asked for us to join a committee to look at expanding our water service along with the city's sewer service to provide for future growth and development. So it's not, to my knowledge, dictating the type of development. It's just planning ahead for where future development can occur. So what our model is currently, and the city's until this point, I think, is to meet development when it occurs as it occurs. But this is more thinking ahead and putting the infrastructure in place before it occurs.
Again, probably some of our listeners don't know, one of the development policies that's been in place in the city for a long time had to do with sewer extensions. And you would have a developer that wants to build a subdivision adjacent to, but outside the city limits. But they couldn't do it without having access to the city's sewer system. So part of the deal is, or has been, that you would say, okay, we'll let you hook into the city's sewer system, but at our time and at our discretion, when we want to annex you, we get to do so. And the idea was to promote a rational development, and as opposed to just sprawl. I can see this working in the same way, but again, I'm editorializing here, but it'd be a comfort to think that somebody's thinking 20 or 30 years down the road about what we want Southwest Missouri to look like.
Correct, I agree.
You know,
Yes.
but again, I'm editorializing and I should be asking questions. Lastly, I want to talk about economic development. And again, just for background, the utility and the city and the Chamber of Commerce got into economic development via what people, gee whiz, this 30 years ago, maybe 35 probably, what we talked about public-private partnerships. And for a lot of people, that sounds like a unicorn and something the government just shouldn't do. Government's supposed to take care of, provide public safety and deliver water and stuff like that, but let the private sector do economic development. And just as a way to background on the issue and frame it, Zenith Television Corporation was here, and they were out on East Kearney, where the big Bass Pro store, or not store, but warehouse is now. At one time, I think there were like 1,500 people that worked there. And then Zenith shut down. 1,500 families were without an income. And the utility, and it couldn't have happened without the support of the utility and the chamber and the city said we need to build an industrial park, and what became a partnership industrial center out on East Kearney was done. But there was a lot of controversy about it. It's turned out to be, I think, a fabulous success. Even more jobs are provided out there than what were lost at Zenith. But that was the reason that was given. There was an emergency to deal with back in those days. But I'll let you make the arguments, but or the statements in support of it. But why should the utility be involved in economic development?
Tom, I think you're correct about the impetus for the Partnership Industrial Center because of Zenith's closure and the need to replace those jobs. I would say there's probably more diversity of employers now, since it's not just one employer within that space as well, and just overall growth. You mentioned there being more jobs out there. We see that as providing economic opportunities for our customers, for our community. That's probably a difference in the way we look at things than, say, an investor-owned utility might look at it. Or maybe even what the private sector would look at, because our customers are our citizens and our owners, that we owe them that responsibility. But in general, we're involved in economic growth in other ways as well. So our main motivation in terms of economic growth is to spread our costs over more customers. So it's as simple as that.
Let me stop you there.
Yes.
You're saying if a big industrial user comes to Springfield and is willing to buy more power and you are able to provide it, it keeps rates down for everybody else.
That is correct. In fact, our commercial and industrial rates are fairly close to state average. They're well below national average, but our residential rates are well below state and national average. So if you look at it that way, the more commercial and industrial customers we have that are closer to that average, the less.
So it's just the reverse.
Yes.
Grandma is not subsidizing Kraft or somebody out
Correct.
here.
Yes, that is correct. And that's not a given. There's different ways to approach that, and we do follow a cost of service model, so we want things to be within a range of cost of service. But besides spreading costs, and besides providing revenue for additional infrastructure replacement and investment and planning ahead for the future, providing more jobs for the community is important because that's a multiplier effect. As that large industrial or manufacturing or commercial customer hires more people, they may be resident in Springfield, or they might be resident in area communities that use other businesses and other services in Springfield that also employ people. So it's that multiplier effect that really allows us to support economic development and to provide those types of incentives that we do for those customers.
So, if where the city would get involved in it, in my past experience, economic development, let's say Costco wants to come to Springfield, but they want the roads and the intersections to be improved. And the argument is, well, why should the existing taxpayer in Springfield build roads for Costco? And Costco would have, or I'm not picking on them, I don't even know what the discussions were, but the way those would go, well, because we'll bring in more money for the city. And so what typically would happen on deals like that is sometimes you would say, well, we'll let you keep, and not keep, but add an extra half cent or something on your sales tax you charge. Or right now you're in a cornfield, it's taxed at 19% as agricultural. You'll be commercial, you're at, I think the number's 30%. And we weren't getting that 30% anyway. So we'll let you divert the taxes that you would pay to pay for the intersection, the street lights, and so forth. So it's not a cost to the existing taxpayer. So now I want to switch over, and a good, I don't know what the arrangement was, but I'm sure City Utilities was involved in the Bucky's gas station out there.
Yes.
And so these developers come to utility, and they want you to run electrical service out to their location, water, that kind of thing. How do you decide what you're willing to do for a potential employer?
Sure. So like a lot of things, we have a policy on that, and it's our extension policy. So that policy is currently being reviewed. We have a consultant that's looking at that, and our board's going to be looking at any possible changes to it this fall. But the way it currently works is that there's an economic feasibility analysis done that shows if this customer were to develop the way that they plan to develop, what would be the rate of return or investment of the infrastructure they're asking us to provide. And depending on if it pencils out, the level is 10 years or less for electric, for instance, then we're able to provide that infrastructure at no cost to the developer.
So if you get your money back in 10 years, you'll pay for it.
Correct.
Okay.
And the theory is that that customer is going to be a customer for a longer period of time than 10 years. In fact, that facility that we're serving, we would serve for longer than the customer owns it typically.
Right.
So once we have that customer in the door, especially if it's a subdivision and there's residential houses there, then it'll be a customer for decades.
Right. Okay. What if you can't get your cost recovery in 10 years?
Our options then are, there are waivers that can be provided by the board and or myself if it's longer than that time period, but we really closely scrutinize those to see if they're strategic. So if it's a development on the edge of our system that is easy for us to serve and allows us to serve additional customers past that, then that might be strategic. If it's something that's further away or doesn't look at future growth, then it would be less strategic and we probably wouldn't do it.
So in some communities, I think Springfield follows a similar pattern. Let's just take a developer is going to put in 100 houses outside the city, and you've got to run utilities out there. What a lot of the cities will say is, okay, you run about there and pay for it, but as other people hook on, you'll get your money back. Is that one of the policies City Utilities follows?
Yes, we do have that ability to have those types of arrangements as well.
Yes. Yeah, okay, I thought you would.
Yep.
So, my last question, and it's kind of a wide-ranging one. You've been at the utility a long time. You've been, we used to call the top guy the general manager. Now we call him the president. But
yes.
What keeps you up at night?
Well, Tom, it's an interesting question because in private law practice, and you probably relate to this, I used to wake up in the night and think about legal issues, and now I think about safety. So, this is probably the first job I've been in where I can't step in and literally do the job for the people that I'm supervising or advising or setting goals and strategies for. So what I worry about is the personal safety of our employees, of our contractors, of our customers, and the public. And that's something that it's hard to control. So having the right education and training and focus on safety, it's our number one core value, helps, but that's probably my biggest fear, is a fatality or a serious injury among one of our people that we serve.
It's probably counterintuitive to some people. One of your predecessors told me one time when there was some issue in the community about police and firemen and the danger that they encounter from time to time. And he said more people die as electrical linemen than policemen do.
That's a scary thought. I try to keep in mind, and I talk to our employees all the time about how what they do is dangerous and complicated, but it's essential. So having the right training and attitude towards safety is something that you can't ever take for granted.
Dwayne, I've taken up a lot of your time today, but is there anything I haven't asked you about you'd like to tell our listeners?
What I'd like to tell the listeners is something I've learned in my first 9 months now as President CEO, And I knew it before, and it really has been driven home as I go and I've talked to almost every employee of the almost 1,000 employees that we have. And that is the care and concern our employees have for them as customers and for them as people and as citizens, just like I have for them and our management staff has for all of our employees. But it permeates the DNA of what City Utilities is about. Not just the services we provide, not just the types of pay and benefits that our employees enjoy, but the fact that they get to serve customers and that they get to provide public service is important to them. And I think that leads to better service, better quality, better value for our customers than they probably realize, because some of them perhaps haven't had other experience in other areas. But as I've become more knowledgeable about the industry and about how other utilities operate and perform, I think the municipal model is the best, and I think we're the best of the best. And that's because of our employees.
Well, I agree with you. I've been a close observer over a long time, and not every experience, but by far the vast majority of my interactions with employees with the utility have been positive.
Great.
And nice people.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, thank you for being my guest today on In Our Town.
Thank you for having me.